All right. So I'll continue. Signed into law on June 16th, 2021. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. Since we do have a quorum, I'd like to call to order for the town of Southborough, Massachusetts, the Neary Building Committee Designer Selection Subcommittee. Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. It is 7:12 p.m. Not only do we have a quorum, we are all in attendance. So first thing we have on the agenda is to approve. By the way, Jim, are you all set? It will be just you and Jessica?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, just myself and Jess.
All right, just checking.
Mm-hmm.
So the next item is the approval of the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2023. It was sent out a couple of times. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes, or shall I just look for a motion to approve? No changes?
Motion to approve.
All right, so that was Mark Davis. All right, so there's a motion to approve the meeting minutes for Wednesday, October 25th, 2023 of the Designer Selection Subcommittee of the Neary Building Committee at 7:30 p.m. We'll do a roll call vote. All in favor, Mark?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that is unanimous. Next, I'm going to turn the next several items over to Jim Burrows of Skanska. Jim, I think the next item is the RFS response review.
Yep.
Followed by the reference review. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So just a couple of housekeeping things. First, Robin, who's our contact with MSBA, sent an email out. And I just before this meeting, I shot it to Roger, yourself, Mark, and Greg. So there's just an acknowledgement of the designer selection panel.
Right. We do need to sign something and send it back, correct?
Correct. And then in the email, they say you can either sign it and send it back, or just respond to the email acknowledging that you've read and understand the procedures. So obviously a signed acknowledgement is probably best, but it's a PDF. So if you want to, if you just want to respond to that original email that she sent, that should be fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I can take that. I can do that tonight.
It looks like it gave us till tomorrow to do that.
Yep.
I don't mind taking on that task, Roger.
Okay, and I'm gonna just apologize. You're gonna see the bad side of my face a lot because I have a second screen going here with a lot of the documents. So I kind of have to look to my left. So I'm gonna try to make sure that I keep my eye on any hands over here. But it's just my laptop is too small to see some of these documents, at least at the scale I'd like to see them.
Yep.
So by way of explanation.
No problem. Yeah, so if we just shoot that over, and I did chat with Robin today, and just let her know that we're meeting tonight and that those acknowledgements we'll go over. So the other very important thing I think that I mentioned last meeting is that tonight prior to the designer selection panel, we cannot rank the respondents. They've sent a couple emails, and I've had a couple of conversations that week prior to that meeting. At that meeting is when we technically review the RFS responses with the MSBA. So they just don't want you going in there with already a ranked order. Obviously, when we discuss it here with the information that's provided, I think we can start to understand where folks are. And then the other piece to that is, as I was thinking about this tonight, we can review all the information that was sent over. And, at the end of the meeting, we can talk about, do we want to meet one more time before the 5th? So folks can have a little bit more of a chance to think about the information that we provided, what was discussed tonight and presented. So at the end of the meeting, we can chat about that a little bit, see if it makes sense to meet one more time. If there isn't a clear, clear favorite for folks, or if people just want to have a bit more time with it. So, okay. With that, I will just run through. Also one point of clarification. I think I said it a couple of times, but we have 3 votes. So just the procedure. So Roger, Mark, and Greg each get a vote. When each RFS is brought before for a vote, it's ranked from 3 points to 2 to 1. So obviously the 3 points is the highest ranked firm, 2 being the second, and 1 being the first, or sorry, the last place firm. And then the points are totaled. So I apologize. I think I said 2 quite a few, or a couple times the last meeting, but yes, Roger, Mark, and Greg each get a vote around the designer selection panel.
I think I'm a little slow on the points. So you said, yes, we get 3 votes, and then what about the 3 points, 2 points, 1 point? No.
Yep. So
how do those get assigned?
Yep. So a firm, you will basically vote on each firm and assign either 3 points. So 3 points being the most you could assign to somebody. And then your next choice is to assign 2 points. And then your third choice would be assigning 1 point. So around the designer selection panel, those tallies are totaled. Whoever has the most points, whichever firm has the most points, will be approved, unless the designer selection panel wants to interview, which would mean that those 3 ranked firms would be all interviewed, and then that vote would happen again after the interview.
Yeah, so
Does that clarify?
So that's ostensibly the ranking process that we'll go through at that meeting.
Correct. Yep.
By assigning, I mean, I guess there's going to be a 3, 2, 1, and a nothing, I guess. Okay.
Yep.
How these going to? Okay.
Correct.
Through the chair, I just have one quick question. Jim, can you just confirm how many members are sitting at the table and vote? Is it 3 for the representatives from the district, and is it a 10-member board from MSBA?
Yeah, let me just pull that up real quick. I believe it is 13.
13 total. Sorry, Greg, I didn't see your hand. Yeah, but by the way, feel free, anyone, as I'm looking back and forth, if I don't see your hand,
Yep.
just jump right in through the chair.
So yeah, so it's a 10-member panel with 7 members on the MSBA side of the table. So
Okay.
Yep.
So very, very briefly, let's fast forward to that meeting. So each of us, that's, at the point in time that we're going to vote, we will have 3 votes, and each vote will pick a 3, 2, 1.
Yes. Yep.
So effectively, we could come out of there with one firm having 9 points, another firm having somewhat less. I mean, if each vote we cast as individual votes from a committee, we'll pick a 3 and then a 2 and then a 1. Each vote will do that.
Correct.
That's how. Okay, I
Yep.
got it.
Okay.
Jim, really quick, does and this may sound picky, but do you know the order of the voting? In other words, does the district get to vote first?
I would have to go back and check. I think they go around the table and do have the district speak first, but let me get back to you on that.
I think it would be good to have the district kind of not, no pun intended, to set the table as to where they would like to go rather than kind of be going last and that, we've already kind of know where the votes are.
Yep. Yeah, so let me,
Mark, I think, go ahead, Jim. I just have
yeah,
something
as
to
far
add.
as I remember, that is how it goes. The district
Okay.
casts their votes and then, yep.
And Mark, I think that that's consistent with what Jim had mentioned before, which is that MSBA weighs at least reasonably heavily the votes of the district. It doesn't mean
Right.
that they have to vote with the district, but if they don't know what our votes are before they vote, our votes aren't going to count. They're not going to be very heavy, by the time it gets through the other seven. But
Roger, you've been doing this a long time. Government doesn't always make sense.
yeah, that is certainly true. But Jim, you're
Okay.
going to check on that?
Yes, yeah. I'll get back to you just to sure that my understanding is correct. So, and like I said, we can always meet just before that meeting, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So, okay. Any other questions on the procedure just from here going forward before I dive in? Okay. All right. So the first document I have, so we are required to submit reference checks and then a designer's sub-consultant matrix that we'll get to. This document here, and I believe I went through this in the last meeting, but just so everybody remembers, it basically breaks out all the pieces and parts of the RFS so that it's in one place, so you can so you don't have 4 different documents open. You can kind of compare things across all 4 of them. So the first section is project understanding. So we obviously reviewed Arrow Street, Lamoureux Pagano, Raymond, and Studio G. For building, so for Reno, phased, occupied, that they all had some experience there. For a new, within the range of our enrollments, that we were, all 4 firms had that. Site challenges, I think all those projects that they listed definitely all had some site challenges. Combining multiple schools, multiple enrollments, which is in our RFS. The only clear example is Arrow Street for what they did in Acton Boxborough. Now, with that understanding, that's combining multiple schools, not combining multiple grades and grade buildings. So that we gave Arrow Street a yes, and the other firms did not have that. And then project scale within 75 million to 100 million in construction costs. So this is construction costs. They all had some within that range. Any questions on that section?
So how important do you, well, we can talk about it then we get to it, as far as combining multi-schools.
I took a little bit of weight that, I think it's definitely the level of complexity of some of these other projects with visioning and things like that. I don't think it's something that we have to, discard somebody because they haven't combined multiple schools. I think they've done complex projects, understand the enrollment process. So, I think it gives a little bit of an advantage for somebody who just went through it. But again, is it an exact match to what we're going to do? Not exactly. So, I think it just goes into the overall picture of your opinion of the firm.
I see Greg's got his hand up. I do know that there's the discussion, because we're early on, still at least hasn't excluded the possibility of well, I'm not sure about combining schools, but to some degree combining portions of schools anyway. I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg. I'm
So
sorry.
just a quick question. I know the question is around combining schools. But also I would just be curious around helping a school, a district redraw zones, because I think that can be as complex as combining schools as well.
Yeah, so I don't think I saw that, but what I can say is, at least for Arrow Street, Lamoureux, Pagano, Raymond, Studio G, I don't know as much. I know they've helped districts with the master planning, looking at redistricting. So I do think I would be confident that they would have some experience with that. Now, that's not to say that Studio G doesn't, but I don't, I'd have to do a little bit more digging on Studio G to see if they had any master planning. Jess, do you remember seeing that? We did kind of split these up a little bit between myself and Jess. So about any redistricting or master plans for Studio G?
No, not as far as redistricting. I'll have to look a little bit more in some of their past experience, just to further dig in, see if they have something like that.
Okay. All right. All right. So the next couple we can go through a little quicker. Registration, that's if they're registered architects. If they're submitting on a project like this, they're going to be registered architects. Personnel, this is a interesting one because this just kind of gives you the size of the firms. So really what we have is Arrow Street at 63, which is a pretty sizable firm. And then Lamoureux, Pagano, LPA, Raymond, and Studio G are all, 16 to 21. So towards the smaller end of the range for size of firms. I think the size of projects that they do in their workload, I think, but I again, it's kind of just trying to paint a complete picture for all four firms. All right, MCPPO and
Jim,
registered.
Jim, what were
Yep.
you going to say about the size of workload? I don't know if I heard you finish that. You said the size of workload.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, if you had a firm that had, 16 employees, or 16 architects, and they had, 20 active projects, you just do the math divided by, what size those teams would be. That would be concerning. When we get down to the number of active projects, that's what we kind of take a look at to compare. So there wasn't anything we weren't too concerned with the size of the firms versus their volume of work.
Okay.
All right. So MC, PPO, and registered architect as the project director. That was yes to all. That's a requirement. MB, WBE. So Arrow Street, LPA, and Raymond were all no's, but Studio G is a WBE, Jess? Yes. Okay. Yep. Yeah, they're a WBE, a women-owned business. So as far as their staff, no concerns here across the board. I think, looking at all their experience for the individual members of each team, I think they've definitely put together good teams with good experiences. So it's not, this kind of just ferrets out, they can have as a firm a lot of experience, but then submit a junior team, and none of the firms here really did that. And I think they're all definitely strong teams.
Jim, just going back to the minority-owned, women-owned business, does MSBA emphasize that a lot in their decisions, in your experience, or not so much?
They do, yeah. So we have to report on it. As far as the firm itself, it's obviously an advantage because we have goals, and what we put in the RFS is the DCAM goals for what we want for overall percentage. When we get to the sub-consultant matrix, that's where the percentages come into play a little bit more for how many MB, WB that they have. But yeah, it's definitely a consideration of the MSBA.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the educational planners we're familiar with, worked with. So I don't know if anybody, if Greg or, David Stephen obviously is very well known and does a lot of projects. Mike Perillo also same type of experience, so no concerns for either of the two folks that they proposed. All right. Community relations, current capacity, which we were just talking about, no concerns across there. Elementary school experience, this is kind of a follow-up, and actually I just noticed this needs to be changed. And then MSBA experience, that they all had some MSBA experience. So projects in the last 5 years. So Arrow Street has 4 active, 18 total. LPA has 5 active, 10 total. So if it's 4 active, 18 total, that means that they've closed out 14 projects. 5 active, 10 total. Raymond was 8 active, 23 total. And Studio G was 4 active and 22 total. So again, for the size of the firms, between 4 and 8, Raymond being a smaller firm, but 8 projects spread across their staff isn't too concerning, especially when you start to look at the dates. They don't pull it off as an active project until it's fully closed out. So a project can be in the latter stages of construction, going into closeout, and they still have to list it as active. So these numbers are not concerning as far as capacity goes. All right. Areas of experience, insurance, no issues there. Liability claims in the last 5 years. So LPA, Raymond, and Studio G had none. The Arrow Street did have one, and that looks like a errors and omissions claim, which is basically their designer's insurance. Looked like it was a residential project in Revere. So this one, I did a bit of digging. I tried to make a call or two on this, and I basically just had what they had in the, I couldn't find a good contact for the full story on this. So it was a residential project. And my understanding is it was just an error omission that at closeout they decided to just go through with the insurance claim. So again, the size of the firm, I would take into consideration on this, that, they're a big firm, that they've done, 18 projects, public projects over the last, 5 years, and that's just their public projects. They probably have, 50 other projects that have gone on. So as a percentage, again, trying to paint a whole picture for all of these firms, it's something to take into consideration. But as far as, we would be concerned, it's not, it's definitely nothing that you would have to disqualify someone for.
Jim, can I ask a question? So Arrow Street, when we went back and looked at the, you don't need to move the grid. When we went back and looked at the number of architects, was significantly more than the other 3.
Mhm.
Now, when you look at these projects, it looks like Raymond and Studio G, again, smaller as far as number of architects, has had more projects than Arrow Street. Is that skewed because they do a lot more projects than just public agency projects? Is that why there seems to be a little, it's not a parallel line, to me.
Yep.
Well, how do you explain that?
So how would I explain that is that it's likely a lot smaller projects that take
Okay.
up less of their staff.
Okay,
You know, when you look through the size of the projects, there's definitely Arrow Street LPA do a little bit bigger projects, so they can only take on so much work at a time.
okay, fair enough.
Okay, and then this one, I'm always happy when everybody signs it. I've had to disqualify folks because they didn't sign their RFS, so everybody signed it. All right, and then relevant projects, as I went through this, you know, they all put forward reference projects that I think can apply. Do they match ours perfectly? I don't think anyone really had any project, but you're never going to get two projects to match equally. I think you're really looking at the complexity, the size, and I think all of them definitely did you know, to tick that box for relevant experience. So, you know, we have the combined schools here again.
It doesn't seem to match though, right? The combined school thing issue, because I'm not looking back at the beginning, but there was only really one that was combined schools. And that
Oh,
was
yeah, sorry. Yep.
Arrow Street, and now we've got
Yeah.
combined all over the place here. So I'm not sure what to make of that.
Yeah, so I think that was just a typo. Because yeah, it was only Arrow Street.
So the columns under Raymond and Lamoureux Pagano, they should also be, well, and Building G, I guess they should also be no's, right?
Correct. Yep.
Arrow
Yep.
Street, okay.
Well, if I may interject, Jim, these are looking at rows, not columns. So it's Arrow Street, yeah, like that. We're
Yeah.
looking at horizontal. I just,
Yeah. So yeah. So
for
we
me,
are-
it threw me off with the.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
was
so-
looking up above. Jessica, thank
Yeah.
you. I was looking up
Yeah.
above, and I was projecting down. My mistake.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, how to format this is always a little tricky. So, yeah, so that's just the applications themselves. So I will jump to the next matrix, which is, so this one we do submit to MSBA. We did submit a draft. They had no comments on this. So this is all of their sub-consultants. So you can do a couple things here. Look at who their teams are behind them. And the big ones that I always look at, you know, structural engineer, their MEPs, plumbing, HVAC, fire protection. All of them have submitted good firms. And then the color coding, I'll jump down to that just before I scroll through them.
Jim,
Yep.
I'm sorry. So you don't have to go back, but the project size, I'm trying to be mindful of Jessica's instruction here that these are rows, not columns. For Studio G, that was the only no. And is that because those projects were all in the thousands, if you will? I mean, they're tiny projects? Am I reading that correctly?
So we, you know, this is a tough one. They have, you know, Groton Dunstable Regional School District. So this is in millions. So that's 71 million. East Hampton Public Schools, that's 81 million. And then two smaller projects. So we're 75 to 100. So they're just below that. So, you know, these yeses and nos, you know, I think you definitely have to kind of analyze a little bit and go back and look and, you know, do what we're doing now and just say, okay, they had a project at 71, 81, 26, and 24.
Oh, yeah. All right. So those thousands under Studio G, they should all be millions.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. Fine.
So yeah, they're slightly shy of that. So, okay. All right. So the sub-consultants, so the blue is minority-owned business, and the red is women-owned business. So I think they all put forth quite a few of each. I would say Studio G definitely has the most. And then LPA and Raymond were kind of in the middle. Then Arrow Street definitely had definitely probably went Studio G, Arrow Street, and then Raymond and LPA were close on MBWB participation. So at the end of the day, when we bring them on, they are required as a percentage of their contract to have required. They have their goals set out of the gate in the RFS and what's in their contract. So these are goals for them to reach, and we have to report those to MSBA. And in MSBA on a monthly basis, we have to submit what their percentages are. And if there's some that are lower, they'll raise that concern. But yeah, all the sub-consultants we've had some experience with, all reputable firms. They've definitely on a few of these, fire protection plumbing, that's typical for them to lump together. Arrow Street did put together fire protection, plumbing, HVAC, and electrical all under one roof. Which has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that it's all under one roof. They're easily communicating. So I do think that's an advantage. We've seen the flip side of it. The potential disadvantage of that is if you have two separate firms looking at a set of drawings and it's all under one roof, there's less accountability because they're kind of self-preservation under one firm. So, I think that would be just something that we would have to keep an eye on. And this did jump out at me that they're putting all of that under one firm. So again, trying to paint the whole picture for us to make an educated decision when it comes time to vote. Okay, so yeah, other than that, no big concerns. And let's see. Yep. Then the bottom of this is just checking off all the boxes that we are required to have, and if they don't have, we have to reject. So thankfully, all of those were yeses.
So now that I understand the color coding of the minority-owned, women-owned, I did a quick hash total from left to right on the top: Arrow Street, Lamoureux, Raymond, and Studio G. And it's 11 Arrow Street, 10 Lamoureux, 7 Raymond Design, and 8 Studio G. Is that a significant difference in other words, between a low of 7 and a high of 11? Is that significant enough to make a difference to MSBA, or is that is 7 enough? I mean,
so one thing to look at is what is the size of the contract going to be, because it's based on a contract percentage. So if you just do the straight counts, it can skew it a little bit.
That doesn't work. All right.
Yeah, like civil engineer, structural engineering, and let's see, what else do they have? Geotechnical is going to be a big contract. Geoenvironmental engineering, hazmat, those are going to be pretty big contracts. So, but then when you get to your smaller contracts, furniture, fixtures, equipment, that's going to be a smaller one. So it's, just the straight numbers can be, can skew it a little bit.
So yeah, there really has to be a follow-on calculation based on size of the subcontract, if you will. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim, just a quick question. So MSBA has worked with all 4 of these firms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's using its prior experience and history with these firms as it is weighing a decision as well. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep.
So I would imagine that, for example, Arrow Street has, used the same engineering firm for some of its projects for a variety of aspects of the project. So is that typical of what they do, what you've seen in the past of Arrow Street?
So having it all under, I've done a few projects with Arrow Street, but this is the first time I've seen, fire protection, plumbing, HVAC, all under the same roof. That's the first time.
So that's
I've seen them lump, not necessarily Arrow Street, but more commonly, I've seen them, plumbing and engineering, sometimes HVAC, plumbing and fire protection under one, but to loop electrical into that. That's the first time I've seen all four of those sub-consultants all under one company.
Thanks.
And they also have data. I see Mark. Mark, go
Yeah, hopefully this is
after you. I'll go after you.
okay. Thanks, Roger. Hopefully this is easy. So I did notice, like under geo environmental engineering peer consultants, they've got their WB for Arrow Street. Peer consultants PC, I'm not sure if that's different, is an MB under Studio G Architects. And then when you take a look at the plumbing or fire protection, you see that Lamro Pagano and Studio G both used VAV International, but VAV International for Lamro Pagano is an MB, but it's not an MB or WB. So I just was wondering what the differences might be.
So I'm gonna have to check on VAV, why that wasn't listed. Can probably pull it up fairly
I
quick.
think VAV is an MB. I've worked with them in the past.
VAV is?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Chris, what did you say about them?
I think they're an MBE.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Mark, are you finished? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm all set. Thank you.
I know we talked about the active projects and total total revenue for those projects. Do we ask about backlog at all? I think I asked this before, but like, are we going to get a projection of what their 24, possibly 25 backlog looks like? If there's anything on the books that, are we weighing those options or thinking about that for a month?
Yeah, so after
Arrow Street could have, 60 something architects but they could have, $200 million worth of backlog that's not listed.
Yeah, so when you go through the references, the backlog that we have, they have to list all of their active projects.
Mhm.
So what it shows is, for Lamro Pagano, I just pulled up, I was going to look at the MBE, they have a couple of projects. So if it's not closed out as a public agency project, it has to be listed as active. So as far as backlog would go, have to be a project that they have won. And from the time they win it until the time they close it out, it has to be listed on there as an active project. So anything on there would be considered backlog. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It seems like, Arrow Street's a large firm and the active projects just seem light for,
Yeah.
what I would think they'd be involved in. Seeing their names on a lot of drawings, and yeah, they could be done with their portion because I could see their work almost a year later. If from a funded standpoint, if the job gets going, they could have worked on the project a year before, but they still have that PA process at the end of those jobs. So we're just trying to figure out how those metrics were measured.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And Arrow Street also does a lot of work in other market sectors other than the public realm. So
Yep.
I know they do a ton of residential, and so, but as far as the rules of our analysis goes, it's only public projects that we're looking at. And I did just pull this up. So VAV should be listed as a Let's triple check here as an MB. So thank you, Chris. So we will adjust that. Okay.
Yeah, in addition to the 4 right in a row, Arrow Street had actually GDD Consulting 2 more times, one for the data communications and then another for technology consultants. They had them 6 times.
Yeah.
Not
Now,
necessarily bad.
yeah, now what I can say is I've worked with GGD more on the electrical side, and they're great to work with. Their drawings are very complete. They are very responsive from, design all the way through until the end when you turn the building over. If there's issues, they're jumping on things. So again, just raising the concern of, potential, and it can go either way. That, I've had things be under one company and it's very advantageous, but I've had it go the other way. So just putting that out there. Okay. So that kind of concludes the analysis of the RFSs themselves. So I will jump to the references unless there was any other questions. Let's see here. Okay. So doing reference checks, you obviously, they're not going to list a bad project, but you can kind of gauge it between projects, how they've done. So the first with Arrow Street, and again, me and Jess just kind of divvied up. I did Arrow Street and Lamoureux Pagano. She did Raymond and Studio G, and we just discussed and kind of compared notes. So Arrow Street, for the first one out of the gate, Acton Boxborough, that's the one that I worked with them on. And, I discussed it with Peter Light, the superintendent there. And, he definitely had all good things, and the ranking is excellent, good, or poor. So Peter Light gave him excellent across the board. And I would agree. I think they perform very well. There was definitely some unforeseen issues with the site. They were proactive, and I've got to see them all the way through from the turnover of the building to now we're getting into the closeout phase. They've done very well. And Peter Light echoed those, that review. The town of Harvard, the Hildreth School. I spoke with Linda Dwight, the superintendent there. Again, performed very well. And both of these projects, this was the first time that Arrow Street had worked in town. City of Newton. I spoke with their deputy commissioner over there. That was an elementary school. He freely admitted, he said, I grade hard, but he said, communications, budget control, document control, were good. They had some issues, but, and then their schedule and I just noticed this.
He didn't grade the construction, or at least there's no check mark on the construction.
Yep. No, because I was trying to reformat this earlier. So excellent for schedule and the construction. He basically said no issues. They hit all their marks during construction. They were very proactive. Communication, budget control, and document control. He said through the design process, there was just some unexpected things in the documents. So they had to do some VE.
So does your summary and construction control result in a good or an excellent? For the check mark? You just checked it.
That was excellent. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yeah. So basically, for communication, budget control, document control, we're good, and then schedule and construction control. Once they got through to construction, issuing the design documents, that he said that was excellent. City of Cambridge, this was for the King open Cambridge Street, upper schools, all excellent. He had all good things to say about that project. So jumping to Lamoureux Pagano LPA, what I can say, one thing just to say as a whole, that's true across all of these folks that I talked to. I think the only one that maybe didn't mention it was Northborough, but for Lamoureux Pagano, a lot of every time I spoke with someone, they said, yeah, we had them for this project, but we actually had them for a project back in, 2003, and we kept them on. It seemed like with LPA, there was a ton of repeat business, that they did a project for them, they performed extremely well, and then they continued to have projects within that district or municipality that kept them on. So, that was just a common theme with just about every reference that we called for LPA, which is obviously a very good review, just that, they trusted them with one project and then continued on with them. So yeah, we spoke with someone in Ashburton, Westminster School District, the city of Worcester. And again, all of these were excellent across the board. Town of Shrewsbury and the town of Northborough. And I think another piece was that LPA, they had a lot of reviews saying that there was very few design issues in their documents as they went through. Now, I take that with a bit of a grain of salt, because sometimes, some projects are just easier to, or not easier, but, are just inherently, you're going to have less design issues because of the sequencing, because of how they were phased, the timing of everything. Maybe they had a bit more time for the drawing. So I take that with a little bit of grain of salt, but I thought it was worth noting. So I guess before I jump to have Jess just kind of run through hers, any questions so far on Arrow Street or LPA's references?
I do. So on Belchertown, the middle school, did you say that was one of the ones that repeat business or not? Was Belchertown a repeat business?
Yeah, so sorry, Roger, I should have noted something. We sent this over to MSBA as a draft, and they sent back comments actually this morning that we can't use OPMs as references. So we are on that project in Belchertown. So, and we can say from experience, we're having a great experience with them out there. So, and again, this was just in the last, I think I spoke with this gentleman at about, this gentleman at about 4:30 today. So, but yeah, so Belchertown, we are doing work with them, but I don't think they've done work in that town before.
Okay, so you don't think Lamoureux has done work in that town before?
No, I'm pretty sure that's their first project out that way.
And is this is so where did I understand that you can't you can't be a reference. So where did the goods come from? The good checks come from? Where did that come from?
So that was from somebody within our office.
Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. All right. I
Yep.
want to find if that person was a tough grader or not. All right.
He is. I know him well. He's a tough
Okay.
grader.
Okay.
He doesn't think anybody's excellent.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think we've had a great experience with them out there. They've changed. They're always changing their policies. It used to be you could use even yourself as a reference, which I never like to do, but they would use, you can't use OPMs as references anymore. So where that came from, I'm not sure. Okay. So Jess, do you just want to run through Studio G and Raymond?
Yeah, so I have my own screen on the side with my notes that aren't reflected here, but As you'll see, the references listed there. What my thought process was to kind of pick references and projects that would relate to Southborough. So you'll notice the first reference is an elementary school, just under 110 square feet. Then you have the Mountain View School, which is a little bit greater in square footage, but it's grades K to 5. So that's kind of the thought process, because obviously each RFS has various references. So we kind of pick and choose what's best for this project. And overall, all excellent feedback. Nothing bad to report. I have a quick comment here on my side note, that something that kind of struck out to me when speaking to some of these references was that overall Studio G was always very willing to come out to the site and meet with clients. So that's always a good thing. And then I want to jump into Raymond and Design Associates. Again, same thing. Like Jim mentioned, we do have some OPM references that we spoke to. However, now that we've learned that we can't use OPM, I will be calling in the next few days. Being it a short week, I might not get a lot of response from folks, but I am going to try and reach out to some new references for some overall feedback. But again, overall, Raymond Associates, very, high compliments. The first reference, I have a note here that says, hire them again in a heartbeat. That kind of struck out to me. They're established, someone they've worked with on numerous projects. So it was great to hear that. A second reference, number 2, always available to discuss. That's what Brian Johnson said, but again, he's an OPM, but that's always great to hear. So all great, great, excellent ratings on everything. So nothing bad to report overall.
Can you jump up to Studio G for a second? And it looks like the only one that wasn't excellent was the document quality. You have notes on that?
Let's see.
Good isn't bad, but
Word trim reference to. All right. So I think on the document quality, it was mostly because I think they didn't, when it comes to document control, they didn't really have a huge role in the construction phase. So I think that's where the good check mark comes from, but nothing that they they weren't how should I put it? Not that their work was
got it.
like missing, like change orders or stuff
Okay,
like that.
okay.
Missing design, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yep. All right, so yeah, so obviously we just went through a lot of information. So typically when these meetings right before the meeting or before the designer selection panel, typically just open it up to discussion, see if any folks see if there's any consensus already among folks for who people are leaning towards, as far as who, if they had to pick today, who would they want? And then, so that's, just helpful to kind of see if there is any built-in consensus already with the information that we provided.
Well, I'll just, Chris, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Somebody with some experience here. Yeah, because I'm overwhelmed actually, as far as to try to pick one over the other, at least. Sorry.
I think the biggest thing for me is the sub-consultants that they, the firm obviously manages those sub-consultants, and the architect, the architectural firm, from all the respondents, I think is a pretty level playing field. based on, you know, those references and what we see. But, you know, I think the sub-consultants are what's gonna, you know, make or break them. And you know, I don't have a lot of experience with the MEP sub-consultants. I have a few projects with one or two of them. You know, I've worked with some of the code and civil, and you know, they have some good consultants on board. So
I'm sorry, which one did you feel has the good consultants on board?
they all pretty much do. It's just a mix. You know, some have, I've worked with some that, you know, are carrying either you know, the geotech or civil, and the MEP firms, and electrical, mechanical, plumbing, fire. Work with VAV, and I haven't worked with what was the other one? GN, the one that had all, Arrow Street had all four. I agree with Jim. There's some benefits. There's, you know, you see mistakes happen even with firms that hire electrical and mechanical. There's always a disconnect, and I've seen disconnects in drawings where electrical and mechanical don't talk, and they're still in the same office. So, you know, I don't, you know, really play a factor into having all four under the same roof. I mean, you could have that, you know, you could have issues anywhere, internally and external.
Greg, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just comment on the Lincoln Street Elementary School project. I was involved in that project. Worked closely with Lamoureux and Pagano. I thought they did an excellent job. I'm also a citizen of the community of Shrewsbury, and Lamoureux Pagano has done a number of building projects for Shrewsbury, from Floral Street School to Oak to, I mean, there's been no shortage of projects in the town of Shrewsbury that Lamoureux Pagano has been a part of. I am one of those people who watch meetings, building committee meetings and town meetings, and I've seen the products. I've actually worked in some of the products that they designed, and I personally speak highly of Lamoureux Pagano just from a personal perspective. It is hard for me to look at all four firms and really to say one is better than the other. But just from my personal experience with Lamoureux Pagano and working with them in Northborough specifically, you know, I think that's one of the firms I'm leaning toward as a strong firm.
Well, I, of course, have had experience with none of these firms or any of the sub-consultants. What Chris said makes sense to me, that, you know, how you manage your sub-consultants and the quality of them is of key importance. But Chris, you didn't suggest that any group of these sub-consultants kind of rose above the rest, right? You said it looks like they have all good choices. I did sort of listen carefully to the let's see, was that Jessica's? No, it was Jim's, the repeat business comment, which was ascribed to Lamoureux, right? One that Greg's talking about, you know, that they seem to get a lot of repeat business. So, you know, people felt very good about the projects they did, good enough to choose them again. But it's my only comment.
It's always a positive. And I'm looking at the sub-consultants right now. And, you know, they're all carrying pretty well reputable firms here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Jim, how do how do your clients make these decisions when everyone seems so close?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're lucky enough to have, just kind of a consensus around this first discussion. Um, so, it's really about who fits best. We just presented a lot of information. That's why I offered in the beginning. I think it would make sense at the beginning part of next week to meet again. People can, maybe take a closer look at the documents, and we'll update these with some of the comments from tonight. Take a little bit more time to think about it, to see if if there is somebody. I think Arrow Street and LPA. I think there's been a lot of good comments with them. I think Studio G. So, this is a very tight one. I think they're all very good firms. And to be perfectly frank, typically you'll have two that are kind of they don't have the experience, they're not right there, and then two will kind of rise up to the top, and then two are in the middle. This is a tight race, so I think what would be best is to maybe have folks take a little closer look at it, think about what we discussed tonight, and then meet early to middle part of next week. I think, we don't have to rush there is no decision to make until we sit in front of the designer selection panel on the 5th. So, we can meet twice next week if we needed to. It's really, and I kind of sounded like a broken record as we presented this stuff, but it's getting a whole picture on everything,
So Jim, I do have a question around, I've not sat, in a designer selection with MSBA. What's the process? Like, what information are they going to bring around these firms, and what discussions in the past have you been part of? What can we expect? Because I think that's important, because they're probably going to they're going to be able to differentiate between these four firms.
Yeah.
In a way that I can't.
Yeah, so they'll look at their capacity. That's a big thing that MSBA looks at. How many active projects do they have? What do they have on their plate? What have they been previously awarded in what timing too? They'll look at what projects have they done with the MSBA previously. I know Arrow Street, LPA have all done, MSBA projects, elementary schools, in the very recent past, obviously, with a couple of the projects that were brought up tonight. So those are the two biggest pieces around the table that they're discussed. There's a couple of, specialists on the committee that will start to dial into, kind of like Chris on this committee, dialing into a little bit more their sub-consultants who they're presenting. But I think you'll see the bulk of the conversation is around capacity and what they've done in the past for the MSBA.
I have one question. If we go back to capacity, we're talking backlog, and then after you made the few comments, I was thinking about, some submissions I've done in the past for DCAM. Do they have to provide an update statement like a subcontractor?
No.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So Jim, from your, Jessica and Jim, from your expertise or your vantage point, if you were on the MSBA board looking at these and looking at capacity, how would you prioritize these four from a capacity perspective?
So I think Arrows for the size of the firms, I would say Arrow Street and LPA probably have the most capacity right now with where their projects are. And I think with Raymond and Studio G not being very far behind, these folks are really close. It's good. This one's going to be a tough decision. I'll just, again, be a little blunt, but I would give it a little bit. I think Arrow Street, just because of the size of the firm, that just gives them an advantage. They're going to be able to take on more work. So, and then, kind of goes down the line to a tie for second between the last three. So, I wish this was a more cut and dry, easy, set of RFS responses, but it's pretty close.
It's a good problem to have.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mark, I'm sorry, Greg, is your hand still up or you good? So Mark Davis, what are you thinking?
Uh, no, I've purposefully just been listening.
I've noticed.
Let me ask a question, and you've probably given it to us before, but I have a tendency to copy a piece of paper and stuff it in a file, and then I can't find the god awful file. Jim, have you given us a breakdown of the sub-consultants, the value of their contracts?
So until we negotiate a fee and they submit, we won't know that breakdown. And when we negotiate a fee, we're only negotiating the architect's fee, and then in any of their base sub-consultants. So we won't have that. So this is, and I actually, the first thing I should say, this is not a fee-based selection process. So it's qualifications based only. So there's no numbers.
And they're probably going to be a percentage of the overall architectural for the project contract, right?
In your experience, what would be say the 4 or 5 biggest consultants
So it's going to be
as a percentage of the whole contract?
I'd be a little bit hesitant to give the exact percentage, but I think you're going to spend probably 20 to 25% on MEPs.
Okay.
And then I think from there, for structural and site, so that's your geotech, geoenvironmental, and you're probably looking at another 20% there, and then it's kind of mixed between all the others. So your structural engineer is in there for 5%, but yeah, your MEPs and your MEPs are definitely going to be your biggest percentage.
So Mark, if I might, because I really I like where you're headed on this. I'm ready to ask Jim a question, but the question may make no sense based on your thinking on this, Mark. So if Jim was to go through the subcontractors and just give them a small, medium, large, as far as without a specific percentage, would that be helpful to us? I say help, like Mark, would that be helpful to you and or Chris or anyone? Is you may know, may already kind of know how significant these subcontractors are. I don't.
Oh,
Is that the right way to go?
The reason I asked is, and I was thrilled to hear Chris is staring at the same list I am, the subcontractors, and knowing the site, knowing what we're potentially dealing with, in my mind, it's very important to have top-notch people as part of that contract that can dig into this stuff. So I was going to start doing the same thing. Look at the subs and just kind of get a sense over the type of projects they've done. Granted, they're on this list because they have the capabilities, but I think your percentages are about what I expected to see. And in my mind, if we've got a weak subcontractor and we didn't look at them carefully, then the project's going to drag a little bit. So I just for my own personal edification, I was just going to run through some of them and make sure I'm comfortable with them, and then leave it there. I'm going to remain probably silent for a bit, just taking everyone's information in, and not really make any kind of a commitment. I am going to be listening to our superintendent. I'm going to listen to our Mark Purple, just to get a sense of what the town is leaning toward. But my book is going to be wide open on these four.
Mark, would you, and let me just ask this question, if I might, Greg, I do see you have your hand up. Mark, would you be looking at these subcontractors, and I think the way you put it, to try to at least determine if you felt there were weak ones that, you know, anywhere? Would that be, would a logical, I guess, result of that be to then potentially exclude or downgrade, we can't rank the actual firm just because?
Yeah, if there are two architects and I'm comfortable with either one, but one of them has a subcontractor that just hasn't had experience on a site we're looking at, that may be, for me, the difference between giving him a 3 or a 2. And yeah, to me, some of these subcontractors play a major role in the end product. And I'm just going to be staring down at the list.
Greg?
Yeah, and I just a question around the quality of the design is really important in terms of obviously overall budget and quality of the product. You know, for Lincoln Street School, I think we had, you know, under 3 change orders for a project in that scope, which speaks to me of good design. So I'm just curious do we have, and maybe this isn't the place where we would look at that information, do we have a sense of the number of change orders on projects? And I know that can vary for a variety of reasons, but to me, when I see a project and I see a number of change orders, to me, then it goes back to the design of the project and concerns about the design. So I'm not sure if that's something to consider or we should consider or not, or I might be off track.
So the only thing I can say is that, you know, you can get that via the reference discussions. And I know with LPA, there was a lot of comments on the quality of the design and lack of change orders, or, you know, the number of change orders being fairly limited. You know, but as far as, you know, a percentage base, you know, you'd have to dig into each one of those projects in pretty great detail.
I guess my point is we're, you know, wrapping up a athletic complex project at the high school, and we've had far more change orders than I would like to talk about, not as a result of things we've said, oh, we would love to add this, but because of poor design. Mm-hmm. So again, there's the, you know, the quality of the design to me has a direct relationship to a project moving forward without a lot of surprises and change orders.
And I can add to that too. If you have a public project with minimal change orders, then you have a really good set of drawings, because contractors will price the potential changes, and they go in pricing the change orders when they're pricing the job, because in public work they bid plan and spec, and they're not going in there subcontractor wise, not general contractor, but they're not going in there thinking about repeat business, long-term client, because they're being competitively bid. So that drawing only shows 5 feet of pipe and conduit. That's what they're calling it. It's change order time, because it's a different mindset in the public market. You're working for a private firm where you have potential repeat business, and so if you have a good set of drawings and you have a project with minimal change orders, then you know the quality's there, because it is, you know, so there are contractors that go in with that mindset that, you know, they're already looking for the scope gaps when they're estimating the job. Right, Jim? Would you agree? It can be pretty cutthroat. I mean, you know, my firm does not do public work, but I'm sure you have more experience with it than us. But
yeah, I mean, the only comment I would make to that is that I think the 149 world which is the hard bid world, is definitely like that. Folks are looking at change orders. I think there definitely some of that in public construction, the 149A. So that's the CM at risk world.
Mhm.
It's, people are thinking more about repeat business in that model. But I agree with you that, the quality of drawings in public work definitely reflects the number of change orders. So to kind of put a caveat in, but I'll also agree with you. So.
Which leads back to repeat business.
Mhm.
So can we get some more information around how many of these companies have had multiple projects with a repeat business? I know there was some anecdotal information with Lamro Pagano, but have any of these other firms been worked in towns in the same towns? And you mentioned Lamro Pagano. Was it only one of the references who mentioned repeat business, or was it multiple references?
Multiple references. I know the city of Worcester, Shrewsbury, and I believe Northborough all said that they did have multiple projects with them. Or no, sorry, it was reversed. So it was Ashburton, Westminster, Worcester, and Shrewsbury all mentioned that they had multiple projects with Lamro Pagano. I think it would take a little bit of time to dive into that. So I wouldn't want the entire decision to be hinged on making sure that we get that information, but we can definitely chase down a little bit of additional information. Just trying to.
I mean, it sounds like we're definitely looking at a meeting next week. Are people, anybody disagree with that? Hopefully I'll do a better job of getting it posted in time, because we don't have a lot of time for that mistake again. But there aren't any holidays next week anyway. No school holidays next week, right, Greg? As far as,
Not that I'm aware of, Roger.
all right. But clearly the quality of the meeting, again, based on folks' schedules, however, but the quality of the meeting is going to probably depend on getting at least some information from Skanska ahead of time, which is also going to take a little time. So, kind of based on our conversation tonight. So, Greg, I know you may have meetings next week. What are blockout dates for you? Hopefully they're not all blocked out.
Evenings, at 7 work out pretty well. I think that I don't have a school committee meeting next week, so I'm pretty open. And just a general comment, Roger, too. I think Jim mentioned that he's presented a lot of information. I agree that I'm now at the point where I need to kind of study these more closely and really come up with my own internal way to decipher all this information and think about which one of these firms I'm leaning toward more than not.
Yeah, I think I have enough information with all the info provided to give you a 1, 2, 3, and a 4.
Well, Mark, you're muted. Do you have enough? You're on mute. Do you have enough information right now just to go ahead and work through the information we have?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a date next week then. Mark, I know, I think, Mark, I know you're Mark Purple. I know you're traveling. I'm pretty flexible next week. I have some knee surgery at the beginning of the week, but it's only meniscus tear, so I should be able to meet any night.
Roger, I would just recommend in terms of posting the meeting, you know, so let's say we get this posted Monday. So the soonest we can meet is Wednesday.
Okay,
So I think later in the week, Wednesday or Thursday would probably be best in terms of getting all the meeting material and having Cheryl and the team post this meeting.
I'll do a straw poll on Wednesday or Thursday. Don't everybody, you know? Don't everybody.
Wednesday, I prefer Wednesday, but
All right,
Wednesday's fine.
Wednesday works for me. Chris,
Wednesday works.
Yeah, Wednesday, the 29th at 7 works for me.
Jim,
That works. My wife's away, so I might have my two small coworkers make an appearance, but other than that, I should be good.
well, then what you're gonna do is upgrade the quality of your participation then, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
okay. All right, so let's see. Are folks in the district around tomorrow, Greg?
yeah, tomorrow morning. Can we create the agenda right now, Roger? That might be
Yeah,
helpful.
let's do it right now because I'm not going to be emailing a lot on Monday, I don't think. So I think that we would, well, we have minutes of this meeting. It's kind of tight. I'm not sure we will.
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic.
Okay. So let's talk about the agenda. What should it be? Are we going to try to, what are we going to try to do? We're not ranking. Are we going to try to have
But
choice?
we can prioritize, right? I mean, it's not ranking, we can prioritize. So, I mean,
Is that true? Is prioritizing another word for ranking, Jim, or what can we do? What can we do?
I think what to be safe would be just saying, further review of RFS responses. I
Okay.
think, and then we can, around that agenda item, discuss, see if there's a consensus of where folks are, without putting a ranking to each.
Okay, so further analysis of further discussion about further discussion regarding the submission, the firms that submitted their bids.
Yep.
But what can we do? In other words, you're saying, all right, so we'll get there, and we can identify a favorite.
Yes.
That's what we can do, and
You
not
can, and then if
each of us can
come
identify
to a
a favorite.
consensus on that, we can have it's a just kind of a delicate line that
This
if
whole
there's a
ranking-
consensus that everybody agrees on, that this is the firm that the district really wants, you can definitely go forward with that. And then it's really, who are the other firms? Are there any other firms that are advantageous?
so when we rank, I mean, we're giving them a 1, 2, or 3, and then it's three votes.
that seems to be verboten, right? At least we can't do that before the meeting.
Correct.
Correct.
We can't do that before the MSBA meeting.
But we
Mhm.
could have two. We could have 2 3s and 2 2s, or I mean, there's nothing that would prohibit us from having. We could rank all 4 3s, all 4 firms 3s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's MSBA has sent multiple communications on this because I think a district, did come in with a ranking. So I think the biggest thing to get to next week would be that there's a clear consensus on this is who we want to go in with as the one that we really want to make a good case for. And then the 2 3 spot, I think with around that discussion, those will hopefully kind of fall in place.
Right, so the agenda is further review of RFS. That's good. We'll get that to Mariana.
All right, I'm available to for whatever tomorrow, Greg.
Perfect.
Anything else before we get to public comment, folks? So it's gonna be 7 o'clock next Wednesday. All right, I don't hear anything else, as far as other than public comment. I think I saw two folks. No longer two folks. I see Sam Stivers. Any public comment? Select Mr. Stivers? Okay. All right, I would like to entertain motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, we'll sort of,
so moved.
so moved by Mark Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chris. Roll call vote. Mark,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
I vote aye. We are adjourned at 8:37 PM.
Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Yes,
Wow, thank you.
everyone have a safe and enjoyable Thanksgiving
You
holiday.
as well.
Thank you. Night,
Next
everyone.
week.
Good night.